theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View starts right now.
Across America, live, this is Point of View. And now, Penna Dexter.
Thank you very much for joining us for today's Point of View. I'm Penna Dexter, and I'm so glad to be with you. And I guess some of the latest news that took place this week. A federal judge in South Texas yesterday, on Monday, temporarily blocked President Barack Obama's executive action on immigration, giving a coalition of 26 states, including Texas, time to pursue a lawsuit that aims to permanently stop the orders. And this was U.S. District Judge Andrew Hannon. His decision came after a hearing in Brownsville, Texas, that took place in January. This puts on hold something we've been talking about here on Point of View, which is Obama's orders that could spare as many as 5 million people who are in the U.S. illegally from deportation. This comes from My Way News. Judge Hannon wrote in a memorandum accompanying his order that the lawsuit should go forward and that without a preliminary injunction, the states will suffer irreparable harm in this case. And certainly that's why these 26 states put forward the lawsuit. And the governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, and the attorney general, Ken Paxton, are happy today about this. Of course, this will be appealed by the federal government. But if those people were given a legal status before this went through the courts, this is what the judge said. He says, quote, "The genie would be impossible to put back into the bottle." And he added that he agreed with the plaintiff's argument that legalizing the presence of millions of people is a virtually irreversible action. Of course, the White House said in its statement they defended the executive orders. And these were issued in November, and the White House said this was within the president's legal authority, that the U.S. Supreme Court and Congress have said that federal officials can set priorities in enforcing immigration laws. Wow, this really was not enforcing immigration laws. This was changing immigration law, and that's been the problem here. And again, the White House said the district court's decision wrongly prevents these lawful common sense policies from taking effect. Well, that's questionable. And the Department of Justice indicated it will appeal the decision. Now, the first order, of course, was to expand a program that protects young immigrants from deportation if they were brought to the United States illegally as children. That was the DACA order. And that was set to start taking effect tomorrow. So this was timely. And that order, of course, resulted in what happened on the Texas border with all sorts of kids coming in from Central America, as you remember last summer. The other major part of President Obama's order, which extends deportation protections to parents of U.S. citizens who and permanent residents who have come to the country and been here for a long time. So a lot of these kids' parents would be made legal and given a legal status. And this was not expected to begin until May 19th. Of course, this has been bantied about in the U.S. Congress. Now fighting over whether the Department of Homeland Security will be funded. And the House is saying, no, we're not going to fund DHS until this order is changed. I don't know if they'll drop that requirement now. We will see. But I have put a really good article up at the website on this. It's called Texas. It comes out of legalinsurrection.com. And it's just an analysis of it. And it quotes lots of parts of this decision. I think you'll be interested in it. It's at pointofview.net. It's entitled Texas Federal Court Enjoins Obama Immigration Executive Action. And if you just go to the website and you go to the show and it talks about read more. Read more means go to the articles that we put up there. This one was a really good one. So thanks, guys, for putting it up. And so we will analyze that a little bit more, I'm sure, throughout the weeks. I know this is going to be quickly appealed, and we will see what happens there. Well, we've got sort of an open line show today with several topics, and we will certainly want you to weigh in and call in. One of them is the fact that we've got the federal government and the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, now has been pressured by the Obama administration, and they're beginning actions that are going to move us toward great federal control of the internet. This has been one of the success stories, of course, over the years, that the internet has been fairly free from taxation. And also from just control by the federal government. Now the FCC wants to make it like a utility, like the old telephone regulations would be placed upon the internet. We're going to have a couple of guests join us to talk about this. And I've got a lot of questions about it myself, and I know you will. And so I think you'll be interested in those two interviews. And then, of course, over the weekend, this awful, awful, awful news that 21 Coptic Christians were beheaded on the beach in Libya by ISIS. And this happened over the weekend. Egyptian planes are now engaged in bombing raids in Libya in retaliation for this. The United States hasn't done anything, of course. But we're really going to kind of go to the broader issue here, and that is the Christians that are being wiped out all over the Middle East. Now this is North Africa by ISIS. And Frank Wolf, who's a former congressman, very much involved when he was in Congress for 34 years in protecting religious liberty, he now has a new organization. He's retired from Congress. And we're going to talk about this real problem of Christians being exterminated from the Middle East, their influence being completely taken out of certain countries like Iraq. And so, he's got some things that the government, actually some policy prescriptions that aren't that hard for our federal government to take, that we hope they will take. And we're going to talk with him about that later in the program. And then there's a couple other news items before we get to our first guest. And one, of course, is the Brian Williams story, which I'm sure Kirby has discussed here on Point of View. But here's a question. This comes from Grabian Montage. It's a website, Grabian.com, actually. And it says they're thinking... they're talking about Brian Williams last week, of course, being caught making up war stories about himself, and some of the other questionable tales that have surfaced since. And then, of course, he exiled himself, and then NBC took its own action, suspending him for 6 months without pay. This got the people at Grabian thinking, what if the public sector held office holders just as accountable? Is a 6-month suspension without pay unreasonable for elected officials caught fibbing? We'd have a lot of missing spots in the government, I think, if we impose that on our elected officials. And they say after digging through the archives, we found a few classic cases of bogus braggadocio. But rather than suffering any repercussions, these individuals went on to become vice president, U.S. senator twice, president, and secretary of state. Very interesting. Also, I might mention another quick study. We talked about homeschooling yesterday, and there's a new study out that says it was a study of 10,000 young adults. Millennials who were homeschooled are less likely to leave the faith than individuals who attended private or public schools. So that's another reason to explore homeschooling. And if you didn't hear the show yesterday, we pulled in 3 different experts on homeschooling and talked about it. There's some nuts and bolts about how you get started if you're interested. So you can go back to our show from yesterday. It's still pretty easy to get to on the website. You can go back to a lot of our shows. So you can go back to really any archive show and listen. So we hope you'll do that if you're interested in homeschooling. Well, next up, we are going to talk about the regulation of the internet. Can the federal government do that? Should they? And how will this affect us? We'll do that right after this.
The Point of View Commentary with Kirby Anderson.
Carbon emissions are rising, but global temperatures aren't rising as fast as many scientists predicted. So instead, the rhetoric about climate change is what is on the rise. Climate change alarmists are making statements that do not match the facts. Bjorn Lomborg, author of The Skeptical Environmentalist, provides some examples of some of the extreme claims made by alarmists. He rightly argues that these worst-case stories are a poor foundation for sound policies. Alarmists point to Arctic sea ice that is melting, but ignore that their computer models also predicted Antarctic sea ice would decrease. The ice in the Antarctic is increasing. They worry that sea levels are rising, but sea levels have been rising long before our current industrial period, and the most recent papers show a small decline in the rate of sea level increase. Every weather phenomenon these days seems to be blamed on global warming. We are told that is why we are seeing more and more droughts. But a study in the journal Nature actually shows a decrease in the world's surface that has been affected by drought since 1982. Hurricanes are also blamed on climate change, yet the only thing that is going up appears to be the damage costs from hurricanes. And that is due to the fact that more people with more expensive homes and property are living near coastlines that have annual hurricanes. If you adjust for population and wealth, hurricane damage is actually decreased. If you dig into the Oxford University database for floods, extreme temperatures, droughts, and storms, you will find that the death rates are dropping. Economic development is the primary reason. A hurricane may damage homes in Florida, but will kill few people. A hurricane in a poor country like the Philippines will kill many more people and devastate the economy. The superheated rhetoric of climate change alarmists does not advance the discussion about policy alternatives. It causes the average citizen to roll his or her eyes and turn a deaf ear to the debate. These doomsayers are losing credibility because of their climate alarmism. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
You're listening to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Welcome back to Point of View. The federal government has been bantying about this whole idea of net neutrality. Some people are calling for it. At the end of last year, President Obama called on the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, to enact regulations over the Internet. And what he asked for, and what the FCC is now asking for and saying that we need, in dealing with net neutrality, is to classify broadband as a public utility and therefore increase taxes. There are a lot of issues and problems with this, and with us to discuss this is Christine Harbin Hanson. She is National Issues Campaign Manager with Americans for Prosperity. Christine, thank you very much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Christine, could you tell us, first of all, what is net neutrality?
Well, net neutrality is something related to the Internet, and what it is, it's a concept based on having Internet service providers, or ISPs, treating all Internet traffic equally. And it sounds like a really good idea, the idea where your Comcast or whoever your Internet service provider would be, wouldn't be forced to make any differences in treating Netflix bandwidth differently than Internet browsing bandwidth. But this has a lot of concerning policy implications, some that many people wouldn't expect. A lot of it concerns taxes and things like that.
Okay,
so
well, one thing about this is it seems to me is that in a free market, if you want something that's better or higher quality in order to serve your customers well, you should be able to get it. But this would stop that, right?
Yeah, there's a number of things, a number of concerning problems associated with the market for broadband service. And one of the problems here is that we have monopolies at the local level, and so in theory, we should be able to get have a market for this. But unfortunately, we have, and many people around the country only have one server for broadband service.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let me ask you about these new FCC plans. Senator Ted Cruz made a speech about it at the Chamber of Commerce. He said the FCC has now rolled out its initial plan. It's 332 pages. We also don't get to read it, and it talks about lightly regulating the internet, but they also talk about regulating it and treating it like a public utility. So, explain to our listeners what that means.
Yeah, one of the things I'd really like to emphasize here is that one of the reasons that we've seen so much development, innovation in the internet space has really been because the government has had a hands-off regulatory approach. And what we're seeing here with the president's proposal and with his call on the FCC to start regulating the internet like utility is that we would likely see less innovation here. What he is calling on FCC Chairman Tom Wheeler to do is regulate the internet like it's a telegraph or a telephone from the 1930s. So this is really antiquated, not really relevant to the kind of services that we're getting from broadband service. This is an archaic regulation, and it's something that we should be very skeptical about.
Does your organization, the Center for American Prosperity, do you advocate any kind of regulation that's not quite this draconian on the internet at this point?
Well, Americans for Prosperity is very focused on a number of issues. Our priority issues include healthcare, energy, budget and spending, and also we weigh in on telecom policy like this. One of the things that we do as a principle, we look at things through the lens of less regulation. So we, across the board, generally call for on elected officials to reduce red tape, to have consumer-focused policies. One of the things that we're working on here is really calling on the FCC is not the group that we think should be making this decision. What we're doing is calling on Congress, elected officials, to make these decisions instead of these unelected bureaucrats because they can't be held as accountable.
Ladies and gentlemen, you can go to pointofview.net. You can see our guest's picture, Christine Harbin Hanson, and it's also got an article that came out of Americans for Prosperity. Congress, not unelected bureaucrats, should decide the future of the internet. And it makes the case fairly simply. This is a hard concept to me. I still can't explain net neutrality and what it is. I don't think to my satisfaction anyway. But there's a demand for this quote unquote net neutrality, which is causing everybody to scramble, Christine, if I understand it right, to regulate the internet in some way. And you're saying that, and first of all, the FCC was going to go a little lighter on this until the administration put pressure on them, right?
That's precisely right. Really, the FCC was going to include some regulations, but they didn't really consider doing something that's heavy-handed until President Obama called for regulating the internet like a utility earlier this year. And so that's something that we're trying to shine light on. There is legislation in Congress that deals with this concept. It's really important, but it's also very confusing, to folks on the Hill and off the Hill. And so our position is, while there's a lot of details that need to be worked out in this draft legislation, it definitely provides a good start to addressing some of the issues with net neutrality. And more importantly, it demonstrates that Congress is a much better place to have this open, bipartisan conversation on internet regulation.
How would this affect, I know that it's going to affect companies, how would it affect the individual consumer? There's going to be some increased taxation, correct?
Definitely. The taxation for consumers is one of the more concerning parts of the president's charge for the FCC to regulate the internet as a public utility. And one of the things that my colleague Cooper Jones does a really good job in this recent Hill piece that you mentioned is that he talks about how this reclassification would stifle investment. And actually, there's many studies that show that this would result in over $11 billion in reduced investment overall in the general economy. So that's really concerning because we've seen across the board that, our economy has certainly benefited from, internet commerce, from things, mobile technology like Uber. But we're going to see a slowdown of that across the board if this net neutrality goes through.
There's one commissioner on the FCC, Ajit Pai. You may know how to pronounce the name better. He is actually going out and speaking against this and saying that the American people are being misled about President Obama's plan to regulate the internet. And he's, there are others that don't like this plan. Is there going to be an opportunity for any kind of comments before, a lot of times when there's something imposed from on high, there is at least a comment period. Do you know if there will be one on this?
Yeah, unfortunately, the comment period's already passed.
Oh.
This has been going on this has really been working its way through the regulatory space for a long period of time. And Americans for Prosperity did ping our activist base, and we certainly sent some comments into for the FCC to consider. So we can only speculate on how much the FCC rule writers are actually taking these into account, although they do face some, they have to address some of them. It's just something we certainly applaud people on the FCC who are championing some of the concerns that we have, and we hope that whatever comes out of the final rule, that they will account for some of the concerns that Americans for Prosperity activists and our coalition partners have highlighted over the past year on this.
Christine, thank you so much for joining me today and for the work that you guys do.
Thanks for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
Ladies and gentlemen, go to pointofview.net. You can find out more about Americans for Prosperity. And also, you can read this one article. I think it will help inform you. It's up there under Christine's picture where it says read more. That's where you go. Congress, not unelected bureaucrats, should decide the future of the internet. That's what they are advocating. And that would be nice if the administration would at least listen to that and let Congress debate this. We will see. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as you know, the Prime Minister of Israel, Netanyahu, is going to speak before Congress next month. And the White House is certainly not pleased about it. And some U.S. senators and representatives are actually bowing to pressure from liberal groups to boycott the address and not go. He's got some important things to say that aren't being heard, especially about our negotiations with Iran. And that's why the White House doesn't want him there. But it's important that the Congress hear from him. And it's kind of been a hot potato, this argument about whether he should come. I'm sure that he will come. But I think that you ought to, especially if you have a member of Congress who is thinking about not going, you ought to encourage them to go and tell them you'll be watching to see. You can take action on this through our website, and the announcer will tell you how to do it. Next up, we'll take your calls, especially on this immigration court decision, 800-351-1212.
It is amazing what you can learn listening to our leaders today. I mean, who would have known that the Islamic State wasn't Islamic? Seriously, where will you hear the truth with a capital T about Islam? Where will you find a reasoned and faithful response to attacks on the Bible and God's design for human flourishing? Here's one answer. Kirby and the team at Point of View. The difference is that we don't have access to taxpayer dollars and we're not funded by major corporate partners. What we do have is partners like you. Now let me challenge you. Become a Century partner. That's $100 a month, or perhaps $1 a day, $30 a month. We have gifts to thank you depending on the level of your partnership. Learn more online using the partner button at pointofview.net, or write Point of View, Box 30, Dallas, Texas 75221, or call us. Say you want to be a partner, 800-227-1444. Will you be the next Century partner? $100 monthly. Pray about it. Or $1 a day. We really need your help. Point of View will continue after this.
You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again, is Penna Dexter.
Welcome back to Point of View. Before the break, I sent you to the Take Action part of our website to actually weigh in with your members of Congress to encourage them to attend and not boycott the speech by Israel Prime Minister Netanyahu that's going to be before a joint session of Congress on March 3rd. And it was a different spot that was aired. It was one asking you to donate to Point of View, and far be it from me to not promote that particular message. That is an important message because we do depend on the gifts of our listeners to Point of View. There's a very prominent donate button at the website, and we would ask that you would go there and take advantage of it and really pray about the amount that the Lord would ask you to give to help us to continue our broadcasts every single day. But also on the website, there's a Take Action section, and you can go there, and the very first item on it allows you to go to a place where you can send a message to your U.S. senators and your representative telling them to attend the joint session of Congress to hear the Prime Minister's speech. And here's one of the things that Prime Minister Netanyahu has been saying out there. On Sunday, he urged European Jews to move to Israel after a Jewish man was killed in an attack outside Copenhagen's main synagogue. You may have heard that news. He said, Israel is your home. We are preparing and calling for the absorption of mass immigration from Europe. The European Jews, after what happened in Paris at the kosher market, in many cases are not feeling very safe. And so he's inviting them to come to Israel and to live there. They'd like to have them in Israel. Extremist Islamic terrorism has struck Europe again, says Netanyahu. Jews have been murdered again on European soil only because they were Jews. And he said his government was about to adopt a plan to encourage the absorption of immigrants from France, Belgium, and the Ukraine. To the Jews of Europe, he said, and to the Jews of the world, I say that Israel is waiting for you with open arms. And he's made a similar call, certainly right after what happened in Paris. He's making it again now after what happened in Copenhagen. And certainly he's also speaking a lot of truth about the United States' position with regard to Iran and these negotiations that are taking place that right now look like they're going to allow Iran to get a nuclear weapon, which is not going to be good news for Israel. It actually won't be good news for the United States either. As we spoke with Claire Lopez last Friday about that one of the things that they are about to have is the capability of even reaching the United States with a nuclear warhead, and we're dithering in these talks. So we need to hear common sense from Netanyahu, and the Congress needs to hear it. I think John Boehner was brave and wise to invite him, even if the White House won't speak with him. But that would be a very important action item for you to go to pointofview.net and ask, use our capabilities there. It's very easy to email both your U.S. senators and your representatives. And just put the pressure on, ladies and gentlemen. We are taking your calls here at 800-351-1212. The issue I asked you to call in about was the fact that a federal judge in South Texas yesterday temporarily blocked President Obama's executive action on immigration. This suit was brought by a coalition of 26 states to permanently stop those orders by the president, and this is the first step. It does allow those to stop. They were supposed to start tomorrow, and at least temporarily they will. Of course, this will be appealed, but let's hear from you. Let's go to Janice in Georgia. Hi, Janice. Thanks for calling in. I appreciate it. You're on Point of View.
Hi. Thank you for taking my question. And I totally agree. If the countries that bless Israel will be blessed, the ones that curse Israel will be cursed. And America is on its way down if they turn against them. My question... Not
only that, they're the only democracy in the middle of all those Islamic countries. And so,
right.
even if there weren't that factor, that biblical spiritual motivation for us to be behind Israel, some people, don't buy into that. There's a security reason.
That's exactly right. The Lord has blessed America for all these years because we have harbored the Jewish people and we have protected them. And He's blessing America for that. My question is, I a legal question on Social Security. When my husband died last year, I was getting 2/3 less Social Security a year than he was. They have cut Social Security, sent me his last check in July, said that I would not get any more because I was a government employee, retired government employee, as a teacher of Georgia.
Are you there?
Yes.
Okay. So you're asking me to comment on that?
Yes. That's under the government pension offset law, and that has been in effect for since in the 30s.
Right.
But a couple of years ago, there was a clause added to the end of that saying that any spouse who was considered a government employee by Social Security, they would not get their spouse's Social Security.
So so what they've told you is actually, it's the law.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so sorry for you.
Right.
I don't know the answer to that. That's going to really affect you, but I don't know. I don't think you have any recourse, but I'm not a lawyer, so you might want to see one.
Okay. Thank you so much for taking my question.
Yeah, thank you for calling in. We appreciate it, Janice. Let's
Bye-bye.
go to Alta in Indiana. Hi, Alta. Thanks for calling in.
Hi, my name's Alta, and I'm an over-the-road truck driver. I've seen a lot of things out here at the government, getting involved in my line of work and so forth. But I want to talk about this immigration issue. I believe that President Obama is wrong. He's changed the law. He is not doing what he should be doing. We have millions of Americans that do not have food, jobs, and so forth. And he's worried about 5 million people that come here illegally, that take away the resources from Americans. It's just aggravating, and I'm sorry, but I disagree with what he's doing. I believe everybody has a chance, an opportunity to better themselves, but there's the right way to do it and the wrong way to do it. And changing the law to benefit somebody before they feed America's own people, and make sure they have jobs and so forth is wrong.
Yeah. Well, what about their argument that they're doing jobs that Americans won't do? Because that's constantly the comeback.
I believe it's true to a certain extent, but I believe that Americans would do these jobs if they were treated with the respect that they deserve. These people come over here and they're not treated with respect. How many times have you heard of these domestics that come over here, what's going on behind closed doors of the places that they are employed? And they can't do anything about it because they're illegal.
I think one of the concerns is really wages. Since illegals come in and accept lower wages for certain jobs, it lowers the wages, so Americans won't take the jobs. It doesn't pay enough for them to consider it worth their while. I think that it could be true that young kids might take some of these jobs, or people who are out there, right now on unemployment might take them if it paid more.
I believe that they probably would, but if you think about it, if you make $8 an hour, I have a daughter. She has 2 kids. She was making $10.35. By the time you pay rent, babysitters because your kids are not in school, put gas in your car, buy diapers and so forth, that everything that you need, they have no money left. They can't afford. You know what I'm saying? If they don't get the wages up and stop giving to the rich and at least get it to where Americans that are willing to work can live off of what they make, then it's can.
Yeah, well, that's not something that can come down from on high, but I think you're right. Legalizing 5 million illegals and giving them the right to work legally in the U.S. is probably not going to help the situation.
If you think about it, if they legalize these people, they're going to be able to draw on our Social Security, which is already they're telling us, by the time I retire, it may not even be there. I'm 56 years old. Tell me in 10 years it may not even be there. That's giving them the right. If they're legal, that's giving them the right to go in and take all these resources away from American citizens.
Hey, Alta, thank you so much for your call. We're coming up on a break. We appreciate it. It's interesting because some of them will pay into Social Security, but it won't be for long because the age group is people who are older in this second order about legalizing the parents of kids who have been brought here. So these people may pay into Social Security for a few years and then collect it for many years. And so that's a very good point made by Alta. We appreciate her call, and we will take more right after this. The number's 800-351-1212. We'll be right back with more of Point of View.
Now, back to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Welcome back to Point of View. I'm Penna Dexter. Let me read just a little bit from this court decision with regard to President Obama's executive order that would really stop and protect 4.3 million individuals from deportation. It's not like they were just going to be immediately deported, but what it does is it gives them this ability to be very much out in the open and to legally work here and all of that in one fell swoop. That's a lot of people. The government, this is from the decision, the government has pointed this court to no law that gives the Department of Homeland Security such wide-reaching discretion to turn 4.3 million individuals from one day being illegally in the country to the next day having lawful presence. So it'd be immediate legalization. No, they wouldn't be citizens, but they'd be legal. The Department of Homeland Security's job is to enforce the laws Congress passes and the president signs, or at least does not veto. It has broad discretion to utilize when it's enforcing a law. Nevertheless, no statute gives the Department of Homeland Security the discretion it is trying to exercise here. Thus, defendants are without express authority to do by law, especially since by congressional act, these recipients, the DAPA recipients, are illegally present in the country. And then later it says the Department of Homeland Security, by this order, was effectively changing the law. While DAPA does not provide legal permanent residency, it certainly provides a legal benefit. This is again from the decision in the form of legal presence, plus all that it entails, a benefit not otherwise available in immigration laws. In other words, the opinion is saying we don't have a law that allows what the president did by his order. And so they're saying that he didn't have the right to just orally, verbally enact or declare the law. DAPA, it says, turns its beneficiaries' illegal status, whether resulting from an illegal entry or from illegally overstaying a lawful entry, into a legal presence. So just zap, just like that. The court struck this down. It's a good thing. It's going to be appealed, and we will watch to see what happens here. But it's certainly this first step in the court system in Texas has been a wise one. Let's go back to the phones and see what you all have to say about this issue. Let's go to Steve in Nebraska. Hi, Steve. Thanks for calling in.
Yeah, hi, Penna. It's a great show. I've been a long-time listener, and I just wanted to make a couple comments. One is my grandparents, bless their heart, came here from Russia back in the 20s, and they did it the right way. They did it the legal way, and if they can do it, other people can do it that way, too.
Yeah.
Second thing is kind of a paradox I ran into yesterday. Lady on Social Security income, fixed income, she gets $699 a month. Well, her Social Security was bumped up $12, and in turn, she lost $20 of food stamps. It's insane. And then the third thing I'd like to say is I really think that Washington's aware of this, but you know, in economics, there's something called an opportunity cost, which means what you forfeit for walking away from something. And what I've been trying to tell people is I think there's about a $25 an hour opportunity cost for somebody to leave the benefits roll. So it doesn't matter if you increase the minimum wage to $10 or whatever. The employers are competing with that opportunity cost. And I don't know how you solve that, but that's just my comment.
That's a good comment. And, you know, it explains what we see out there is people that have left the workforce permanently. And that's why we're now seeing pretty good unemployment figures, but we're seeing big numbers of people that have permanently left that are no longer looking for a job. And that's because of this exact phenomenon that Steve from Nebraska brought up, that the benefits are such that they have just decided that they'll just stay there. They'll stay in the Social Security Disability Program, or they'll, use the government benefits whatever way they can, and they will give up on looking for a job. They don't want to take the jobs that pay lower. And part of the reason, as we said with the last caller, that the pay is lower in some of these jobs is simply because so many illegals fill the jobs and keep the wages down. So we've got, sort of an economic problem here. And we certainly need some of these people, these immigrants in our country for various demographic reasons. We do need them to work here, but we need them to be legal, and we don't need them to be made legal by fiat. We need the Congress to come up with a very common sense plan where we have the people that we want to coming in, and not a whole lot of people where we have no control over our immigration system. Let's go now to Texas and speak with Rita, listening in on KAVX. Hi, Rita. Thanks for calling.
Hi, Penna. Thank you for taking my call.
What's your comment?
Well, when I was listening to you talk to Alta earlier, you had asked her the question about, or actually made the comment on the argument about we need the immigrants because they'll take jobs that Americans won't. And my first thought was it's really a faulty argument for those people. when you're deciding on immigration, in my mind, whether or not Americans will take that job shouldn't even come into play. But I think if you took the illegal immigrants out of the picture, Americans probably would take those jobs.
The companies might have to pay a little more to the Americans for taking the jobs, but I think you're right. I do think you're right. I think that we need immigrants to work here, and we have to figure that out. But the first step, as we say here all the time on Point of View, is the border and securing that and making sure we have more control over who comes and the skills that come in.
Right. Not too long ago, I was doing a research paper on Germany, and they also have an immigration issue a lot like ours. And it's like we're being glutted with unskilled people. And so when the economy turns bad, those are the first people who lose their jobs. So I agree with immigration. I think maybe we need to be looking at more skilled people coming in and be just a little more selective.
Yeah, and the comment by the Heritage Foundation, they measure this, that a family headed by an illegal immigrant qualifies for, if they are in need of welfare benefits, the average family gets $34,000 a year or something like that if they're getting benefits. So they use it as, that would purchase a car every year for this family. And, this is what's happening. And that is the best point, and that is often they will lose jobs. They're more likely to lose their jobs because they're unskilled, and then they're in our system, and we're providing that. And so, that's just not the right way to go. It's not a recipe for financial health in a country. Thank you for pointing that out, Rita.
Well, thank you. Thank you for taking my call.
Ladies and gentlemen, the callers make the show, and we do appreciate your calls here on Point of View. I do want to mention that on our website today, there is a take action item, and we've been discussing it a little bit, that the Prime Minister of Israel will be coming for a speech before Congress March 3rd, and some of the members of Congress are facing pressure not to go, especially by the administration, by liberals, and by those who just don't want to be involved in blocking Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. That's what he's going to talk about. I think that's what he'll talk about. And so he needs to be able to say it, and all the members of Congress need to go and hear it. And if you would like to encourage yours to go, we have an easy way to do it by going to pointofview.net and going to our Take Action button. And our announcer is actually going to kind of walk you through that a little bit and the rationale for it during the break. But next up, we are going to continue our discussion about internet freedom. We're going to add a little bit more to that discussion. Dan Gainor will join us, and he's going to be talking about why the media hasn't been covering this. That's probably why we're having a little trouble defining some of these terms, because we're not really seeing many stories about it. I see it in the Wall Street Journal, but that's about it. We're going to talk about net neutrality and a free and open internet. Our government is stopping that in many ways.
Israel has been a solitary smile in a dust storm of scowls and terrorism. In early March, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is coming to America, but the president refuses to meet with him, and many members of Congress now say they won't attend his speech at the Capitol. Is this how we treat a friend? Is that what you expect from your leaders? Point of View developed its Take Action system for issues like this to help make your voice heard by elected officials. Visit pointofview.net right now and click on the gray Take Action button near the top of the screen. That's the gray button, Take Action. We've also got it in the middle of the front page under the pictures of today's guests. Take action now at pointofview.net. Pointofview.net. Tell your representative and your 2 senators you expect them to attend the speech and to support Israel. Point of View Radio. One more way we're helping you stand for truth. Pointofview.net. Take action. Point of View will continue after this.
I just thank God for y'all. I listen to you every day, truly. I wanted to thank y'all for everything you do each day to inform Christian families and our community about the things we can do, and just the way you're so informative. I listen to you daily and love you guys and appreciate you so much.
God bless you, Kirby, for keeping this show so on track and for the decades of wonderful help to this nation that Point of View has been. We're all big fans of your work, and we pray that God will just prosper it.
As a Christian, over the years that I've followed this program, I am constantly challenged to be on guard and to evaluate what's going on. And if for no other reason, to protect the caliber and the truth of your programming, I need to participate and to back your program financially to ensure that the truth stays out there for people to hear, to view, and to be a part of.
This is Point of View Radio.
Hi, this is Kirby Anderson. You know, each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging: apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View continues right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Penna Dexter.
If you go to pointofview.net, you'll find out more about this topic that we are discussing. There's an article there if you go to read more under today's show, and it says Congress, not unelected bureaucrats, should decide the future of the Internet. There is an issue percolating out there. You may not have heard much about it, and the reason is the topic that we are going to discuss with our next guest. This idea of regulating the Internet hasn't gotten a whole lot of play, and the Media Research Center has pointed that out. With us now to discuss this is Dan Gainor, and Dan is with the Media Research Center. He's Vice President of Business and Culture for the MRC, and he's worked in media. He also appears to talk about some of these issues on Fox Business Network periodically. And Dan, thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. This is a very important topic, and the SEC is getting ready to vote on it on the 26th.
Okay.
And they will probably vote in new regulations, whether we like it or not.
What are the regulations? I know that they treat the Internet like a public utility, but what does that mean?
Well, first of all, we're not allowed to know. I know this sounds silly, but they have a 332-page plan that we're not allowed to see until they vote on it. One of the members of the FCC has shown what the plan looks like. The down 332-page plan shows it in his Twitter, on a Twitter post. It says, "I can't show this to you."
Yeah, because this is not Congress looking at this. This is a governmental commission, the FCC.
Yes, and they can do whatever they want, and based on certainly the way that the media has pursued this, they can get away with it because nobody's going to hold their feet to the fire. I mean, more people are obsessed with minor nuances of things that go on. I mean, remember, the media freaked out when a Republican staffer on the Hill did mild critique of the Obama daughters in her own private blog, and she was almost immediately hounded out of her job.
Right.
But they won't spend any time pursuing something that will regulate the entire the Internet for Americans. So since Obama came out back in November talking about how he wanted to see more regulation of the Internet, back, I guess it's about November 10th, we've had only, on evening news shows, only 3 minutes, morning and evening news shows, only 3 minutes and 38 seconds of coverage on this issue. And almost every second of that has been repeating Obama talking points, giving the left-wing side not even any time for critics who might be concerned about, hypothetically massively new government regulation.
Yeah, and so that's a problem, and it's amazing to me, Dan, that people use the Internet every day, and yet they're not concerned about this regulation of the Internet. That's actually it's not even being debated. It's pretty much of a done deal. Dan Gainor is our guest about this, and you said there's only like 3.5 minutes of coverage on this on the network morning and evening shows. And, that's definitely the fault of the media. And I think the other fault is people just don't know. I mean, there's been this call for net neutrality, but people don't even know what it is. They think we need that because of the nice name. But,
Well, and also because it's been propagandized, too, and convinced just to put this as a, and then we'll go into a little bit about net neutrality, but just to put
please
this
do.
They covered the Flake game. Remember that with the stupid football controversy for the New England Patriots? They covered that 19 times more during this time period than they did, this issue about regulating the internet. Now, first of all, when we talk about regulating the internet, this is not just a one-front battle. The Federal Election Commission, the FEC, is also moving to regulate it. Obama has made some noises that he himself might regulate the internet, which he can do. A lot of this goes back to a ruling that happened several years ago called the Citizens United ruling, and it made the left apoplectic. The idea that you could create a documentary film about a political candidate and actually produce it and let people see it is something that they are genuinely against because it's their person.
So Dan, how would it affect people if the government ends up implementing these regulations? How is it going to affect the average American? What should these folks be reporting?
Well, I mean, first of all, the likelihood of increased regulation means the universal thing is we always pay more. It's been estimated to be something like $150 per person per household, which that's close to or more than, depending on how much cable you get, maybe more than a month. So that would be a very significant increase for people. Just at a time when gas prices are going up, you're going to get hammered with an extra fee. It would mean job losses because you regulated another industry into a position where it's difficult for them to function. So those are two pretty key ones. And then just because the idea of net neutrality is everybody gets the same thing. Not everybody gets a good thing. Everybody gets the same thing. For anybody out there who's ever driven in rush hour traffic, particularly if you live near a big city, or Washington, D.C. is got sometimes the second, sometimes the first worst rush hour traffic in the country. And so when you see just complete gridlock for miles on end, everybody's got the same equal opportunity. There's no fast lanes that you can go out of. There's no way getting a toll to move faster or anything like that. You're stuck, but you're equal. Well, that's a classic government plan. Well, let's give everybody the same equal garbage. Well, we could do that tomorrow. We could say, we're going to put everybody in America on 14.4 dial-up. If people who don't remember 14.4 dial-up, it was cataclysmic.
Yeah, I remember.
Slow. You would sit there, watching and waiting while one image would load almost pixels at a time. I mean, you just want is that a picture I really care about? You're backed up already. I mean, I've worked in the internet in some way or another for 20 years. And the idea of government moving in and making that work more difficult is scary. And to know that this is the same government that has tried to regulate conservatives, try to invade newsrooms. How can we see the idea that government's going to suddenly control the means of modern communication as anything other than a threat?
Yeah, and a power grab. Listen, Dan, you have given the best really explanation of this of anyone, but the audio is kind of bad, so I think I'm going to say goodbye right now. But everybody's at least got the best explanation of net neutrality we've had today. So thank you, and we'll get you back.
Sorry, we'll do this again.
We certainly will, Dan. Thank you for everything you do, and thanks for joining me today.
Thank you.
And we're taking your calls, ladies and gentlemen, 800-351-1212. You can talk about net neutrality, government control of the internet, and certainly this court decision about President Obama's immigration order, all of that on the table. So stay with us for more Point of View.
The Point of View Commentary with Kirby Anderson.
Carbon emissions are rising, but global temperatures aren't rising as fast as many scientists predicted. So instead, the rhetoric about climate change is what is on the rise. Climate change alarmists are making statements that do not match the facts. Bjorn Lomborg, author of The Skeptical Environmentalist, provides some examples of some of the extreme claims made by alarmists. He rightly argues that these worst-case stories are a poor foundation for sound policies. Alarmists point to Arctic sea ice that is melting, but ignore that their computer models also predicted Antarctic sea ice would decrease. The ice in the Antarctic is increasing. They worry that sea levels are rising, but sea levels have been rising long before our current industrial period, and the most recent papers show a small decline in the rate of sea level increase. Every weather phenomenon these days seems to be blamed on global warming. We are told that is why we are seeing more and more droughts. But a study in the journal Nature actually shows a decrease in the world's surface that has been affected by drought since 1982. Hurricanes are also blamed on climate change, yet the only thing that is going up appears to be the damage costs from hurricanes. And that is due to the fact that more people with more expensive homes and property are living near coastlines that have annual hurricanes. If you adjust for population and wealth, hurricane damage is actually decreased. If you dig into the Oxford University database for floods, extreme temperatures, droughts, and storms, you will find that the death rates are dropping. Economic development is the primary reason. A hurricane may damage homes in Florida, but will kill few people. A hurricane in a poor country like the Philippines will kill many more people and devastate the economy. The superheated rhetoric of climate change alarmists does not advance the discussion about policy alternatives. It causes the average citizen to roll his or her eyes and turn a deaf ear to the debate. These doomsayers are losing credibility because of their climate alarmism. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
You're listening to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
We're taking your calls at 800-351-1212. Certainly this court decision in a Texas court that actually sort of stops the enforcement of President Obama's order with regard to legalizing 4.3 million illegals, giving them the ability to escape deportation. And that stopped. It's basically barred for the moment until this goes up through the court system. That's a good thing. We're celebrating that. We love to hear from you on that issue and just on the whole issue of illegal immigration, legalizing illegals. Again, the number's 800-351-1212. Also, the government regulation of the internet is certainly a topic on the table. And over the weekend, of course, you certainly did not miss this news that a terrorist group with links to Islamic State, ISIS or ISIL, released a video showing the beheading of 21 Egyptian Coptic Christians in Libya. This is so sad. I mean, this is Christians, and obviously they're being beheaded because they're Christians. And on Monday, Egypt and Libya launched warplanes in an air assault on a city in eastern Libya, Darna, where the group is based, where ISIL is based. Josh Earnest, the White House spokesman, said this wanton killing of innocents is just the most recent of the many vicious acts perpetrated by ISIL-affiliated terrorists against the people of the region. Yes, that's good that Josh Earnest said that. Meanwhile, the Egyptians went and took out warplanes and started bombing, and we haven't done anything about it. We are going to talk about this. We're going to talk about the really extermination of Christians out of the Middle East and now Libya and North Africa. And Frank Wolf will join us. He is a former congressman. He recently retired after 34 years in Congress. One of his big issues was religious liberty and also the persecuted church around the world. he will join us. He's now started a new group, and he's also at Baylor in a chair that is dedicated to religious liberty. So we're thrilled to see what he's doing in his quote-unquote retirement. So that will be great. But so we do want to kind of put this issue out there, and I did put up on the website a big article out of the Atlantic. It's called What ISIS Really Wants, and it's a very good description of this group, how dangerous they are, what they are, who they are. Are they mainstream Muslim? What's the difference between other groups and them? It's long, and I read it this morning. I had to share it with you, and I put it up at pointofview.net. So you can find that. It's one of our articles, and I would suggest reading this one, just printing it out and reading it. It's pretty long, so make sure you have some paper in your printers. I think it's about 15, 16 pages long. But you need to we all do. We need to understand ISIS. They're very dangerous. Let's go to the phones and take some calls here. Let's go to Ken in Georgia. Hi, Ken. You're on Point of View.
Good afternoon, Penna. Thank you for the program. I was listening to the gentleman as he was through the bad telephone connection there discussing the net neutrality issue. Sounds like, if I understood and what I heard was that this is really going to be kind of rammed down the American people's throat the way the Obama administration wants it. And, Ronald Reagan said that, the words that you really never want to hear is, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. And I believe that as one aspect of it, as a two-pronged approach of a government's involvement in something that's so quote-unquote free, is that they can control the Internet, government control and involvement. And secondly, it will probably no longer be free. And this administration is looking for monies from looking under every rock to fund the socialist giveaway programs that this government, as we're going to give away fish rather than teach people how to fish. And again, thank you for bringing up the point about the judge in Texas issuing the order, the suspension of the free immigration program that Obama has, I believe, unlawfully tried to execute without the proper role of the other branches of government involved. And hopefully this wrong-headed approach will get stopped in its tracks.
Do you think, thank you for all those comments, and I want to come back on a couple of them and just add something, but on this immigration order and this judge decision, do you think, how the Congress is going in and trying to tie funding of Homeland Security with alteration or revocation of that order? Do you think the Congress will stop trying to do that now that we have this court decision?
I think the Republicans should stand tall in the saddle and do the right thing and press forward with a bill that removes those funds that would allow Homeland Security to do the wrong-headed approach that Obama wants them to do.
Yeah. That's good. Your comment about this Title II for the Internet, and they'll be taxing it, and they'll be bringing in more money to the government, as you mentioned, and then to fund the socialist programs. And it's just so interesting because, as our guest Dan Gainor said, it really will dampen investment and innovation. So it's putting a knife in the free enterprise system, and it's putting a tube in there and sucking out some of that energy and putting it into socialist government programs, the ones that this administration likes. It's pretty sad. Thank you for your call. We appreciate it. And we're going to take another call. Let's go to Erica in North Carolina. Hi, Erica. Thanks for calling in.
Hello. My comment was actually about the Internet.
Yes.
And anything, it's more personal than anything. I know what all the regulations are going to be, but I call it a top of head syndrome. because that's what you see most of the time. If you have children or most people, they will reach for their telephone and they peruse the internet and make comment on it. And yes, we have freedom of speech in America, but if regulation will make people communicate with one another more openly, let's say over the phone, in person, write a letter, I'm all for it. And I know it may thwart some government or some programs for enterprise and things like that. But on a personal note, I'm all for it.
Well, I don't think it will, but I do resonate with your concern that people don't talk as much because of the internet. I mean, you see people at like a restaurant eating dinner supposedly, and they're like, I don't know who they're texting or what they're doing, but they're on their phones and they're not even communicating when they're sitting at a restaurant. Right. It stifles that face-to-face communication or the telephone. Sometimes I find it so much easier to text someone rather than call because, it's going to take less time. But I think you're right that to be concerned about that. You are. I think we all need to make an effort to keep those communications up. Those personal communications.
The internet. I use it myself.
Yeah. I know what you're saying.
I've noted with parents and children, the children are off on one game and the parents are off on their game or, internet.
Yeah.
Now, as far as that's concerned, but as far as the immigration situation and immigrants coming in and taking American jobs, Americans, I think, are I want it now, fast-paced, and give it to me, and I want this amount. But they're not eager to put out the effort to work towards things, where immigrants that come in and they work the jobs that we don't want, because I'm an American, that we don't want, and they're getting them. We've been a big melting pot forever, and I don't think it's ever going to change. So as far as them coming in, we should be prayerful of all of our government officials, whether we like their administration or not. We should be prayerful that they're doing the right thing.
Good point. Good point. I've got to let you go because we're coming up on a break. But thank you for your call. You're right on a lot of things. And I will say that I don't think that it's realistic, even if you wanted to be against immigration. It's the idea right now that there's just so little control. And this order by the president makes it even worse and harder to control the situation. We need to do this smart. We need to bring in people that can do the jobs that we need done. And we need to make sure that we don't have the criminal element coming in. And now we have the terrorist element to deal with. And so these are the things that are not done by this order and need to be done. And Congress needs to come up with a good plan. This is not it, and that's why it's good it was stopped by this particular judge, at least for the moment. Well, ladies and gentlemen, again, let me point you to pointofview.net with all kinds of things for you. Our guest today on the program, articles about net neutrality and the control of the internet, an article about ISIS, a very informative one, and a lot more there, and also the Take Action item, encouraging your senators and congressmen to do the right thing when Bibi Netanyahu comes. We'll be back with more of Point of View.
America needs true friends in the Middle East, and for decades, Israel has been a solitary smile in a dust storm of scowls and terrorism. In early March, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is coming to America, but the president refuses to meet with him, and many members of Congress now say they won't attend his speech at the Capitol. Is this how we treat a friend? Is that what you expect from your leaders? Point of View developed its Take Action system for issues like this to help make your voice heard by elected officials. Visit pointofview.net right now and click on the gray Take Action button near the top of the screen. That's the gray button, Take Action. We've also got it in the middle of the front page under the pictures of today's guests. Take action now at pointofview.net. Pointofview.net. Tell your representative and your 2 senators you expect them to attend the speech and to support Israel. Point of View Radio. One more way we're helping you stand for truth. Pointofview.net. Take action. Point of View will continue after this.
You're listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again, is Penna Dexter.
And we're taking your calls here at Point of View, 800-351-1212. Let's go to Shirley in Georgia, listening in on GNN. Hi, Shirley.
Hi, how are you?
Great.
Yes. The first point that I'd like to touch on is the internet, neutrality?
Yes.
I'm not real clear on this. I'm actually, at this point, I was researching it on the internet because I hadn't even heard of it. And I use internet every day. I don't even have cable in my home because I watch, I don't know if I can say it, but Netflix. I choose what I watch. That way I don't have to watch garbage I don't want to watch.
A lot of people do that.
Yes, but we chose just to have internet because that's all we use. And my point is that I really don't want the government dictating to me things that I can and can't do or overseeing me any more than they already are. The more I think about it, this off-the-grid deal that you hear all the time on all these programs is becoming more realistic.
Yeah, it sounds more attractive, doesn't it?
Yes, it definitely does. So I'm going to research this more so I can kind of put in my comments and send it to some of these sites here that are protesting this. The second thing I'd like to touch on is immigration. First and foremost, I would like to say that we are a democracy. No president should be able to decide on his own to step into war when he wants to change the laws. Now, I think that Congress, the Republicans and the Democrats need to work better together. They're fighting each other constantly. That's why we can't get any changes made legally the way that we need to. But I am for some immigration reform, being the grandmother of 2 Hispanic grandchildren. And I also help in the Hispanic community translating. I would just like to say that people don't really know until they've been with, immigrants, how difficult it is on them to be in hiding. A lot of these people are parents of children born here, and it's not the parents that you're hurting, it's the children. Because if you say, I'm going to take this parent away and send them back over here that's been here, say, 10, 12 years, and they have children, what are the children to do? Then they're dragged out of a society that they have become accustomed to. They don't know anything different, and they're miserable. Some of them would be living in poor villages that don't even have medical treatment available. You have to drive 2 or 3 hours.
Your arguments are the points they're using, but don't you think that this ought to be decided on a case-by-case basis and not with this blanket amnesty?
I think that it should be decided. It has always in the past been decided on a case-by-case basis. And I do think it should be. And I think that the funds that they have already should be going toward doing this and having it done the right way. I don't think just a blanket anything is going to cover each and every individual the same.
Well, it's also going to let cases through that we don't want.
Yes, and when we talk about, terrorists and things, I kind of laugh sometimes, and it's not good because people do cross over from other countries, go into Mexico or places like that, Uruguay, and then they cross over here, and then they go through Mexico, and then they come into the States. But I can tell you could I don't know of any terrorist that has come from a Latin country. And so that I always kind of laugh at that.
So you don't buy that argument?
Well, I buy the argument because there are other immigrants, but they get in easy. The terrorists come over easily.
Yeah, a lot of times they fly in, they come in, they overstay their guest visa and things like that.
Yes, they are funded so that they can come in here with a good visa, whereas the poorer nations come in whichever way possible. Some of them do come in with visas and overstay. Some of them can't even afford to get a visa. And as far as the workforce that was mentioned earlier, I agree and kind of disagree with some of the different comments. But as the woman said, there are jobs that the Americans here do not want to do. And I see this every day. There are jobs that are offered to legal American people who don't want them.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
And then the people fall back on different other, immigrants that are here, illegal or illegal, because there are both. They fall back on them because they're willing to do it because, they know what they came from. And we think poor is poor here.
Yeah,
it's nothing.
That's really true.
Yeah.
It's just that there's a better way to do this than the way this president has advocated. The way he's advocated takes all ability to control the situation out of our hands. Listen,
Exactly.
I appreciate all your comments. You are very knowledgeable, and thank you so much for calling in today.
Thank you.
Really,
and my last comment was just to say that my stand against it is not one way or the other for, about immigration. You know how I feel about that, I told you. But that the president should not be able to make this decision on his own.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of people that are for reforming immigration. They're even for comprehensive reform, but they don't like the way the president did this.
No, because he is on his last, he knows he's at the end of his run and what's going to be done, He's going to be over with his run, so he thinks he can just, excuse me, I'm sorry, but I just think that he feels like he can just do what he wants, and that's not how our country was set up,
So the courts did the right thing, and let's see what happens. Thank you so much. I appreciate your call.
Thank you.
God bless you, Shirley.
Bye-bye.
Let's take
God
another
bless
call
you
from
too.
another Georgia call. We'll take one from Jethro. Hi, Jethro. Thanks for waiting. Are you there? I think he waited so long that he's gone away. Let's go to William in Texas. Hi, William. Thanks for calling.
Hi. Well, thanks. I think to get to say something. I'm not at all happy with the internet situation. Because I can imagine what he did to our health care, the best health care in the world. How do you improve on a hole-in-one? You can't. you can't. I don't know. I had an ace-deuce playing golf one time, and that's as close as you can get, an ace and then another almost ace.
Yeah.
But what he is doing is we have, look at all the immigrants that have come over here, and they did it the right way. But this thing of just bundling them up, flying them in here and everything. The governor of Louisiana and a bunch of his people, they went down the river there just to see what it looked like. And while they were doing that, they saw people going across. And I've talked to different people. I'm in Texas, of course, and I've talked to different people about going down there and building a fence. I don't know how we can build a fence when there's so many people that don't know how to do it. And I said, well, maybe we can send some money to Austin, to the governor's office, and earmark it for the new fence. And then maybe we can hire some people. Maybe we can get Benjamin. Maybe he can send some of his boys over because they know how to build.
They know
fences.
how to do it. Yeah, I was in Israel this summer. I know
they
that.
know how to do
listen,
it. And you know
thank
what?
you so much for your call. You've got you're fun, but I've got to go.
Okay.
So thank you for your call. I appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, there was sad news this weekend, of course, these beheadings of 21 Coptic Christians, Egyptians, in Libya by ISIS. And Egypt certainly retaliated for that. They bombed ISIS targets. They're still doing it in Libya. And, of course, they want the U.S. to help. And this was ISIS's deadliest attack against foreigners outside the territory that it's already conquered. Most people there, actually in Libya, they may not be able to say it openly, but they are supporting these bombings because they don't want ISIS. They'd rather have bombings than ISIS. ISIS is now on Europe's doorstep, being in North Africa. They have promised to conquer Rome. So somebody's better get their act together and oppose this. And it's certainly when they advance through these parts of the world, they draw more converts and they get stronger. And the White House, though, says we shouldn't overreact. President Obama told CNN's Fareed Zakaria that Islamic State, quote, has no governing strategy, end quote. He also said they, quote, sustain or feed people. They cannot sustain or feed people or educate people or organize a society that would work. Now, that's true right now. Therefore, they're not an existential threat to the United States or the world order. Well, he has that definition of existential threat. They are a threat, though. And we're going to talk next up with some of the damage with Frank Wolf, former congressman, about some of the damage that they have done and the fact that certain parts of the Middle East, and especially in Iraq, the Christians are almost absent now. And that's a really sad situation. It will change the complexion of some of these countries. He's got some plans and some things we can do about it. We will talk with Frank Wolf in the next segment. Stay with us for more of Point of View.
Now, back to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Well, the news peg here is the sad fact that 21 Coptic Christians were beheaded by Islamic State terrorists in Libya on a beach over the weekend. And but it's part of a greater trend that's been happening in the Middle East. And now here we are in North Africa with this happening, with Christians being killed and leaving these places and leaving them really bereft of Christians. And with us to discuss this is former Congressman Frank Wolf, and he's just recently left Congress after 17 terms, and he's actually been called the conscience of the Congress. He has worked in the area of religious persecution, religious liberty for nearly his entire time serving from the state of Virginia. And he left the House, but he's not retired. He is now the Wilson Chair in Religious Freedom at Baylor University. I have a child that graduated from Baylor, and I'm very happy to hear this. And also he joined 21st Century Wilberforce Initiative, which is a newly created religious freedom group, as co-founder and distinguished senior fellow. Representative Wolf, thank you very much for joining me.
Sure. Thank you very much for having me.
I'm so glad to have you and glad to hear about all your activities and the things you're doing. I do want you to talk a bit about what happened over the weekend in Libya. This is sad, isn't it?
It is very sad, and I think it's going to be a problem that we're just going to have to address. The Christians in that region, particularly in Iraq and also in Syria, but now we see in Libya and other places, are just being brutalized, are just being killed, are just so many bad things are happening. We were in Iraq for 5.5, 6 days, about a week and a half ago. We interviewed about 75 to 100 people, everyone. The stories of the Christians and the Yazidis in northern Iraq is just unbelievable. And yet they keep wondering, why will the West not speak out, not do something about it? So now you see ISIS has moved into Afghanistan. Our embassy in Yemen is closed. Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula controls that. We see we have no embassy in Syria. That's pretty much totally gone. Even the embassy in Baghdad is in a Shia-held, Shia malicious area where it's very dangerous for the American personnel to move around. The embassy in Libya is gone, so the embassy in Somalia is gone. And so we are seeing basically a war on Christians and other religious minorities.
You know, I know that we're under attack here in this country as Christians, but we're definitely in the majority still. Why? We're not speaking out. We're not pressuring our government. Even going to churches on Sunday, evangelical churches, you don't hear much about this. We kind of have to get on board here, don't we?
Well, you're exactly right. I'm down here in Midland, Texas, and I gave a speech at the prayer breakfast today precisely on that subject, saying, where is the church in the West? Why are they not advocating? Why are they not speaking out? Really, silence is coming out of the church. Not to speak is really to speak. Not to act is really to act. It means that we're going to do nothing. And we cannot compare what's taking place in the United States with what's taking place in other parts. But even here in the United States, you're beginning to see the erosion of freedom of religion. You see InterVarsity's been kicked off their campus at Dartmouth, kicked off the campus of Vanderbilt, kicked off the campus of the colleges, the state system in California. You saw the fire chief in Atlanta lose his job because he's basically a Christian and said something that they didn't like. You see the Houston pastors having to asked to submit their sermons. So it's an insidious relativism that's sort of creeping in even here, but abroad, in China, Catholic bishops under house arrest, Protestant pastors in jail, 118 or 20, even more than that. Buddhist monks and nuns have set themselves on flame of fire and killed themselves because what the Chinese government's doing. You see the persecution of the Catholic Church and the Evangelical Church and the Buddhist faith in Vietnam. We see what's taking place in Burma. So the world is just this issue, and yet you see the church in the West really not saying very much. Now, there have been some exceptions. Pope Francis has spoken out. Cardinal Dolan has spoken out. Cardinal Wuerl has spoken out. Rick Warren has spoken out. There have been some, but overall, there's a silence coming out of the church here in the West. And that's the one thing that came up in all the conversations. The people who have all lost their homes, who have all been forced out of the Christian areas, the Nineveh Plain says, does anyone in the West care? And keep in mind, in Iraq, more biblical activity took place in Iraq than any other country of the world other than Israel. Abraham's from Iraq. Rebecca lives in Iraq. The 12 tribes of Israel lived in Iraq for 20 years. Esther, for such a time like this, is in Iraq. Daniel and the lion's den took place in Iraq. Nineveh and Jonah, they just blew up Jonah's tomb. That's in Iraq.
Yeah, that's when you hear about Mosul, folks, that's Nineveh.
Mosul is Nineveh. I mean, Jonah's tomb was blown up. Ezekiel was buried there. Daniel was buried there. And yet, it's like the West just says, hey, I didn't know. I don't really care what impact. And lastly, to bring this home closely, ISIS is coming here. ISIS is now moving into the West. We saw the Copenhagen situation. Mm-hmm. We saw the French newspaper. We've seen the radicalization here in the United States. Major Hassan was radicalized by al-Awlaki, who was in Yemen, who was using the internet. You're seeing the radicalization of people in place. And with ISIS, there are over 20,000 who are fighting with ISIS who have come in from outside of Iraq and Syria. And over 3,000 to 4,000 are from Western Europe, England, France, Spain, Germany, and about 140 or more are from where? Are from the United States of America.
Representative Wolf, we have to be, I think we need to talk more about, and we're almost at the end of the show here, but we'll need to talk more about the real repercussions of this exodus of Christians from the Middle East. But I know that you have joined this new group, and you're a distinguished fellow there. It's the 21st Century Wilberforce Initiative. Do you have a plan? Is there something now that people could jump onto to try to remedy the situation?
Well, our website is 21wilberforce.org. We hope to make the issue of religious freedom and human rights one of the major issues in the 2016 campaign. So no one running for office as congressman, as senator, or president can run without understanding and being able to articulate what should be done. There are a number of other things we need to aid the Peshmerga who's fighting ISIS. We need to urge the Kurdish government to set up a Christian protectorate in the Nineveh Plains. The Peshmerga, 1,000 have died, and they can't get weapons from the United States. So there are a series of recommendations that we've made based on our trip, but the main thing is to make the issue of religious freedom and human rights such a compelling issue that no one running for office, no one should be able to run without being able to articulate their concern, their understanding, and what they're prepared to do about it.
You know, you mentioned Esther being there for such a time as this. I mean, I think you're here for such a time as this, Congressman Wolf.
Well, that's nice of you to say. I don't know that I want that responsibility, but I want.
Sometimes we get responsibilities we don't want.
Well, sometimes, but I'll tell you what. When you talk to the young girls there, the Yazidi girls, what took place in their life, you talk to. There was one Christian man, his wife.
You know, we're about at the end of the show, so I can't. Just a second.
You can't get treatment unless you convert. They did not convert, so the West should be involved.
We should. Representative Frank Wolf, thank you for what you're doing. We will definitely get back with you many times to discuss this. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, have a great night. We'll see you tomorrow.
America needs true friends in the Middle East, and for decades, Israel has been a solitary smile in a dust storm of scowls and terrorism. In early March, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is coming to America, but the president refuses to meet with him, and many members of Congress now say they won't attend his speech at the Capitol. Is this how we treat a friend? Is that what you expect from your leaders? Point of View developed its Take Action system for issues like this to help make your voice heard by elected officials. Visit pointofview.net right now and click on the gray Take Action button near the top of the screen. That's the gray button, Take Action. We've also got it in the middle of the front page under the pictures of today's guests. Take action now at pointofview.net. Pointofview.net. Tell your representative and your 2 senators you expect them to attend the speech and to support Israel. Point of View Radio. One more way we're helping you stand for truth. Pointofview.net. Take action. Point of View is produced by Point of View Ministries.